Panther-Lair basketball post-game show. Panther-Lair post-game after a basketball game for the first time this season, and we picked a heck of a game to start off on as Pitt goes to Syracuse, takes a halftime lead, looks good. They're up 11 to start the second half, and then they go into an absolute hole, fall apart, and lose to Syracuse 81-73 at the, whatever they call it, Wireless Dome. Disappointing loss on a lot of levels, none more than the fact that this game was there for the taking, that they had a lead, they were playing their way, they were getting what they wanted and doing what they wanted, only to end up turning around and blowing it in the second half. And blowing it for a variety of reasons. Rebounding was an issue, free throws were an issue, Blake Hinson was an issue, Bub Carrington's play in the second half was a problem. There were a lot of problems in this game. There were a lot of issues and mistakes and troubles, and we're going to talk about it here probably for the next 45 minutes or so. We'll go until about 3 o'clock and talk about this game, this loss for Pitt. Panthers fall to 9-4 overall, 0-2 in the ACC. And we'll talk about it here on the Panther-Lair post-game. So get your comments and questions in. We'll take as many as we can over the course of this show. Lots to say, lots to talk about, of course, as we let everybody roll in. Don't forget the things we always ask you to do. Like this video and subscribe. YouTube.com/Panther-Lair.com. It's the where we put all of our video content, whether it's the daily morning Pitt videos Monday through Friday, our weekly live show we do every Wednesday night at 8 o'clock, these post-game shows that we'll do on occasion after various basketball games, typically on the weekend, typically road games is probably what we'll do for the most part. And it's all right here, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com. If you want to make sure you don't miss any of it, like this video and subscribe, youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com, and the website, Panther-Lair.com. A lot of conversation happening right there, as you can imagine. A lot of conversation about this game. People are being completely rational, as fans always are. Lots of good discussion happening, though, and I'm sure there's going to be a lot of good discussion about this game happening over the next few days as people talk about it heading into Tuesday night's game against North Carolina at the Peterson Events Center. Comments and questions are already filing in, and I think everybody's rightfully disappointed in this loss. I mean, it's just the thing I'm going to say, and I'll repeat over and over about this game, I think over the course of the next 40 minutes, 45 minutes, however long we do this show. The thing I'll say over and over is that the most disappointing part is that the game was right there for them. At one point, Syracuse was battling back, and right when they, maybe when they made it like 44-43 and took their first lead in the second half, or maybe when they extended it to 46-43 or something like that, like Jordan Cornette was like, they've taken away Pitt's belief. No, at that point they hadn't, and I don't think they really ever took away Pitt's belief until the very end, or maybe there was a really bad turnover that might have been the point where they took away Pitt's belief. It was 65-61. Actually, Pitt had tied it at 61 on a goaltending call. They gave up an easy basket on like a pick and roll type of play, and then down at the other end, Bub Carrington tried to pass to Blake Hinson. It was a bad pass. It was easily intercepted and taken down for a dunk. I feel like right then that took some wind out of their sails, but they were largely still battling. But I bring this up because the reality is Syracuse had lost its belief by the end of the first half. Pitt was in control, and when Guillermo Diaz-Graham made a three as the first basket in the second half to make it a 41-30 game, I think Syracuse was teetering on the brink. Now, obviously, they were able to come back from the brink. Obviously, they were able to play themselves out of that funk, and they made 1, 2, 3 baskets in a row. Well, 2 baskets and a free throw before Pitt scored again, and Pitt ultimately only had 2 field goals in the first, 5.5, 6.5, 7.5 minutes of the second half. And that was a major issue, is how the offense went into a hole in the second half. I mean, they didn't defend well in the second half. I mean, there's no question about that. But Syracuse goes out and, scores 51 points in the second half. They shoot 51% from the floor in the second half, Syracuse did. Pitt, conversely, shoots 38% from the floor. But the biggest problem was, offensively at least in the second half, was Blake Hinson. 0 of 7 from the floor, 0 of 5 from 3. He made 3 out of 4 free throws, although I think his miss was the front end of a 1-and-1. He also had a bad foul after a free throw late in the game. It was right, yeah. Judah Mintz got his fourth foul and sent Ishmael Leggett to the line. Leggett missed the front end of a 1-and-1 shortly after Bub Carrington had missed the front end of a 1-and-1. But on Leggett's miss, Blake Hinson gets called for just a useless foul, a pointless foul. There was no reason to foul in that situation, and they end up going down to the other end. Syracuse converts their own 1-and-1 to now have an 8-point lead. And there were just moments like that throughout this game, particularly in the second half, and a lot of them involving Blake Hinson. He had 2 turnovers in the second half. He had 3 rebounds, but he missed every shot he took. That was 7 shots. That was more than a quarter. Well, a little less than a quarter of Pitt's total field goal attempts. They shot 12 of 31 from the floor. Hinson took 7 of those, and he missed all 7. He missed all 5 3-point attempts. And as much as I've been in favor of this team driving more and, Bub Carrington going to the basket and all these guys driving, and I think there were points where it worked, sometimes when Hinson and Leggett in particular were going to the basket, it was just a lost cause. That size and length that Syracuse had inside, just, they weren't getting the foul calls, largely because a lot of times Syracuse wasn't fouling. Sometimes Syracuse was fouling, but a lot of times they weren't. It was just, it was a textbook case of how to lose a game in the second half. From the free throw shooting, where they were 6 of 15 and had multiple front ends of 1-and-1s missed. I think 2 front ends, twice they missed the front end of a 1-and-1. So they missed 9 free throws, plus those were 2 other points they left. That's 11 points they left on the table in the second half in a game that they lose by 8 points. I mean, that's game changing. You look at the whole game, where Pitt shoots 11 of 24, there's 13 missed field goals there. Plus they had 3 front end of the 1-and-1s. That was 3 more potential points. It's 16 points that they just didn't score because, from bad free throw shooting. And I was able to chalk it up, early on to, well, look at who's shooting the free throws. Cause Federico would take a lot. He took a lot of free throws early in the season. And so you said, well, look who's shooting the free throws. Federico's not going to be a good free throw shooter. Once you get more of the guards out there, but, Bub Carrington's 3 of 5. Blake Hinson's 4 of 7. Ishmael Leggett goes 1 of 2 and misses the front end of a 1-and-1. Carrington was 3 of 5 and also missed the front end of a 1-and-1. Guillermo Diaz-Graham, for as good of a shooter as he is, he's 5 of 9 from the floor in this game. 3 of 4 from 3. He's 3 of 4 from 3 and 1 of 4 from the free throw line. That's a way to lose a game. And speaking of Guillermo, we're kind of bouncing around here because I got a lot of different thoughts on this game. Speaking of Guillermo, he starts the second half. He's the only Pitt player to score a basket in the first 7.5 minutes of the second half. But he comes out at the 16:40 mark, doesn't return until the 10:22 mark. So he plays less than 4 minutes and then sits more than 4 minutes. And in that stretch, by the time he comes back in, Pitt's down 7. And I know you're looking at different matchups. You're looking for different things. You want to get, I guess, Federico's defense out there. Although even at that, and I mean, I guess at that point, Syracuse is on a little bit of a run. But to me, I want the offensive guy out there. And granted, when they had Guillermo Diaz-Graham on the court and they switched to a zone, Syracuse took advantage of it by working down low and finding a lot of success near the basket. And I don't know if Federico plays that better, but Guillermo certainly wasn't. I just think you probably could have gotten more playing time for him. Guillermo finished with 19 minutes, which is a decent amount. He actually fell short of, Jim had that stat about when Guillermo plays 20 minutes in a game, what he ends up producing. So he fell short of that, but he still ended up with 14 points and 5 rebounds. Shot 5 of 9 from the floor, 3 of 4 from 3, and made big baskets. Zach Austin came up with 3 big 3-pointers while playing 19 minutes. Austin moved back into the starting lineup for this game. Personally, I kind of like Austin coming off the bench. I probably would have stuck with that, and kept Will Jeffress in the starting lineup, although Jeffress in the first half was a plus 12. Pitt was plus 12 points with Jeffress on the court. In the second half, minus 13. Now, every Pitt player had a bad plus-minus in the second half. Federico was minus 19. Bub Carrington was minus 18. Hinson was minus 15. And, nobody really had good numbers in the second half as far as that goes because Syracuse, outscored them by 16 points. But it was Yeah, it seemed like Guillermo's their best option right now at the 5. And I think you keep picking and choosing with Jefferson Austin of who you want to go with. I depending on what you're looking for out of the game, I mean, I guess I could see starting Austin. I just like him as an option coming off the bench. But that's all secondary to the biggest issue right now, which is Blake Hinson. Blake Hinson's got to be able to score for this game. My thing that I said this week on the Morning Pit, and then we talked about it on the live stream as well on Wednesday night, was that Blake Hinson is this team's most valuable player. I don't think there's any question about that. Everyone would agree. But Bub Carrington's the most important player. And it sort of felt that way in the first half. It felt like those guys were playing those roles. Hinson had 8 points on 3 of 5 shooting and a rebound. Carrington had 13 points, 5 rebounds, 3 assists. He played really well in the first half. He had 3 turnovers, but he played really well overall. And I thought it was interesting. There was sort of to my mind at least, a Bub Carrington versus Judah Mintz narrative in the first half that I'm watching. You know what made me think it was 13:35 mark. Carrington made a 3 to put Pitt ahead 15-14, and it was like a tough shot. It was a just pull up 3 that with a hand in his face, and it was a tough shot. And down at the other end of the court, Mintz tried the same shot and missed. Now, Mintz is not a great 3-point shooter. I think Carrington's already a better 3-point shooter than Mintz is. But it was funny to see sort of back-to-back Mintz try the same shot that Carrington had just made and miss it. But I felt like that narrative was running through this game. And for the first half, Carrington was the better player. Mintz in the first half had 4 points on 2 of 5 shooting. He had 2 assists, 2 fouls, and 4 turnovers. Carrington in the first half, 13 points, 4 of 7 from the floor, 5 rebounds, 3 assists, 3 turnovers. So both guys had some turnover issues, but Carrington was the better player. In the second half, though, Carrington goes for 4 points, 2 rebounds and 2 assists. Mintz in the second half, 8 points, 1 rebound, 3 assists. So he didn't really get that much better. Carrington just fell off in the second half and struggled. But they need Hinson. I mean, like when Jim and I were talking about it on Wednesday night, I said that, Blake Hinson being the man for this team is like, that's the starting point of it all. Like, if he's not the man for this team, if he's not playing at a high level and scoring a lot and leading them, then they're going to have trouble. It kind of doesn't matter what other guys do. And there were some valiant efforts here. Carrington in the first half, Jalen Lowe in the second half, Zach Austin occasionally, Guillermo Diaz-Graham generally, Will Jefferson the first half. There were other valiant efforts and good performances, but you need that guy as the foundation. Hinson has to provide that foundation of scoring, or else they're going to have a lot of games like this, where they're able to pull it together and get out to a lead. And quite frankly, I mean, what they got out of Hinson in the first half was fine. You could win with that if you get something that matches it in the second half, because then he finishes with 16 or 17 points. And they probably win this game if he's rolling like that. But he's going to have to figure out how to play against the way teams are defending him. He's going to have to figure out how to score even when the things he wants aren't there. And he's going to have to figure out how to produce when the shots aren't falling. And they weren't falling today. You see what the end result was. I want to get into the comments and questions, see what people are talking about. Josh Newark says the game is pretty simple. You give up 50 points and a half, you lose. You miss double-digit free throws, you lose. Lose to a bad team in Syracuse, very disappointing. This could have been a good, solid win for Pitt. I think as it currently stands, this would have been a quad 2 win for Pitt, and those things can kind of move around where the net rankings and whatnot. But I think coming into today, Syracuse was number 83. Since it's on the road, that would make it a quad 2 game. So it was a good opportunity to log one of those. I think as it stands right now, they had about 13 quad 1 and quad 2 games left on the schedule. So you had opportunities to you have a bunch of opportunities to sort of get some wins in that level, in that area, which they don't have from the non-conference. They only played 2 games, I think, against quad 1 or quad 2 teams, and they lost both of them. I think it was Florida and Clemson. Everything else has been quad 3 and quad 4. So, that's you need to take advantage of these opportunities when they present themselves. And it was there, and it was there in the first half. Just second half, it fell apart, and Hinson couldn't do his part to sort of pull them back in. And that's the other thing. I'm going to get to more comments and questions. We got a super chatter here, our good friend Michael B. First half, good performance from Hinson. He gets 8 points. Guys score around him. It's good. Guys are playing well. Second half, you get a few standout performances. You get a few individuals playing okay and playing well, but you need Hinson to be able to pull the team up. When they're falling behind by 4 or by 6, they fall behind by 5. When it's in the final 5 minutes and they're down 3, then or 2, they're down 4, they're down 6. Like, you need Hinson to step up and make a shot there. Like, that's got to be his role. And I think Bub Carrington can grow into that role. I think Jalen Lowe showed some stones today, and I think he showed he can maybe grow into that role. But Hinson's got to be the guy for you to do that right now and throughout this season. And wherever Pitt gets, however far they get, however much they win, however well they play, is going to be a result of him making those shots when they need a basket, when they need to be able to chip away to lead or stop another team's run. And you can look through the whole second half, right? Guillermo Diaz-Graham hits a 3, okay? Then it's a free throw for Syracuse, an and one for Syracuse, another basket for Syracuse. Then Guillermo drives to the basket and comes out of the game right after it. And then it's a 3 for Syracuse, free throws for Syracuse, a fast break dunk for Syracuse, free throws for Syracuse, more free throws. They finally get, Bub Carrington scores, a turnover, a putback, and a bad baseline out of bounds pass that turns into an alley-oop and free throws and all this stuff for Syracuse. You need to be able to break up those runs. You need to be able to break up those streaks. And ultimately, even if I think Bub Carrington might be able to do it, or I think Jalen Lowe might be able to do it, or Ishmael Leggett should be able to do it, Blake Hinson has to be the one who does it. He's got to be the guy who steps up. And that's the biggest storyline out of this game, is that they didn't get anything out of Blake Hinson. All right, let's go to Michael B. He's a super chatter, always been a good super chatter and friend of the program. Says, Chris, just keep it real for all the fans. Pitt had a miracle season last year, but they are back to being a losing team. Hard to win when you have 0 inside game and Hinson can't shoot all of a sudden. I have little hope. Yeah. So Hinson not being able to shoot is the big problem. The inside game, they didn't have an inside game last year either, but you did get 14 points out of Guillermo Diaz-Graham tonight, although, 9 of those 14 came from the 3-point line. 1 came the free throw line. So he scored 2 baskets inside the paint, and I think, or inside the 3-point line. I think they both were in the paint. They don't have an inside game. That, you're right. That's not who they are. That's not how this offense is going to be run. That's not how they're going to be. I think they want defense and rebounding out of their centers. That's what they need those guys to be able to do. Well, that's what they need out of Federico. Out of Guillermo Diaz-Graham, they need defense as much as he can provide, rebounding as much as he can provide, and shooting from the outside. That's what they need from their centers. That's how they're built to play. That's what I think the team is built to get out of its centers. And then you need Blake Hinson to knock down shots. You need Bub Carrington to knock down shots. You need Ishmael Leggett to be a reliable source of offense, whether he's shooting from outside or he's driving to the hoop. And you need those guys. No, you're not going to rely on the post players for offense. You're not going to rely on the centers for offense. And you knew that coming in. I don't think anybody who came into this season thinking they were going to get a lot of their centers offensively was mistaken and should have realized that. Nothing was really going to change there in terms of interior scoring. The offense you're going to get from your centers is going to be from Guillermo Diaz-Graham shooting outside, or maybe Federico getting some putbacks, which I don't think he had a few points today, and I think they might have been on putbacks. I'm not sure he really got much else. He had 6 points. He scored 3 baskets. I could glance through, and he had the one drive to the basket right around the 6-minute mark in the first half. Do you remember that? Federico putting the ball on the ground and driving. How about that? Don't ever really want to see that again. That doesn't need to happen again. Yeah, but Hinson's got to score. He's got to make baskets. That's and now is where Jeff Capel's going to have to find new ways to get him the ball. Hinson's going to have take on a new understanding of how to score. And then if he's still getting all this attention, Bub Carrington has to make them pay. Zach Austin has to make them pay. Ishmael Leggett has to make them pay. These guys have to capitalize when the attention is focused on Hinson as much as it has been. And thanks to Michael B for being a super chatter, as always. Wolf HD says this was pathetic. This team is not making the tournament. I mean, and Lad Scrimpton says this is how they look against teams that aren't literally who state or whatever. I don't know. I mean, I think they showed what they can do in the first half. They obviously have to continue that and do it for 40 minutes. You can't just do it for the first 20, but I think they showed what they can do in the first half. I think they showed what they're capable of doing. They played well. I thought they played really well. Even though they were making mistakes and committing turnovers, they had 10 turnovers in the first half. I thought despite that, they were able to overcome those issues and play well. But again, when you run into a situation like the second half where the other team starts scoring and going on some runs, you need to be able to stop those runs. You need to be able to get baskets that can shut those things down. And right now, your number one guy to do that is not doing it. And that's not to say other guys can't emerge. That's not to say other guys can't become that guy. But the guy who's supposed to be that guy is not doing it. And so he needs to. He needs to. Homer Simpson says, team was rusty coming off the holiday. You could tell they did nothing during the break. When they asked one of the twins in an interview what he worked on the break, he said he went to Boston with his mom. I mean, they had time off. There's no question about that. And I think, I mean, Jeff Capel after the last game, the Purdue-Fort Wayne game, said it was going to be good to have some time off, to rest their bodies, get their minds away from the game for a little bit. I think they looked... So on one hand, they looked a little sloppy with the turnovers. There's no question about it. But Syracuse was also very good at forcing turnovers. That's something, they're one of the best teams in the ACC statistically at getting turnovers. So it wasn't a complete surprise that Pitt had some issues turning the ball over. But again, I still look at it and say they came out of the first half with an 8-point lead that turned into an 11-point lead with the first bucket of the second half. So even if they were rusty, even if they didn't get a lot done over the break, I mean, they still came out and played well enough to be leading 38-30 at halftime. So I don't entirely buy that it was a product of rust. And to be honest, I kind of don't want to hear that it was a product of rust. I don't think you're making excuses, Homer Simpson, but there have been a lot of games where we've sort of heard this excuse or that excuse. There was a long layoff, or they had a big break coming up, or finals were coming, or they played a lot of games. They played too many games in a short stretch, and then they didn't play enough games in a short stretch. And man, you just need to go out and win basketball games. You need to go out and play well, and win. And obviously that wasn't what happened today, but I don't really have any interest in excuses and things like that, because they should be able to, they should be, regardless of the time off, and being on holiday break and all that kind of stuff, you still should not blow an 11-point lead in the second half. You know what I mean? If you have an 8-point lead at halftime, you have an 11-point lead early in the second half, you should be able to hold on to that. John Marzullo is a super chatter, and we appreciate that. He says, Chris, it seems this team has trouble putting together a complete game since the first few. Well, I mean, part of that I would say Blake Hinson. I think when he struggles, they struggle. I did think it was really encouraging how Pitt finished the first half. Final 5 minutes of the half, they went on a 14-4 run. That's not something we've seen out of this team really all season. You know what I mean? The games they've lost, and even games that have just gotten close, they've struggled at the end of the first half. They have not closed out the half very well. And here, granted, they benefited from a technical foul on Syracuse, which gave them 2 extra points when Bub Carrington knocked those down. But, this situation, they scored and outscored Syracuse over the final, the waning minutes of the first half, and closed on a really strong note. I think that was as encouraging as anything. There were 3 things that really stood out to me in the first half. One was the play of Bub Carrington, who I think had a really good half despite 3 turnovers. One was the play of Will Jeffress, who, like I said, was a +12, the best plus-minus of anybody on the court. And I thought he played really well in the first half. And then the other was the finish, just because they haven't finished they haven't gone into halftime with momentum very often this season. They've generally limped into halftime and struggled in those final few minutes, but they didn't do that today. They went in on a high note. They played strong down the stretch. And so I thought that was encouraging. And so that gave me even more reason to believe they were going to come out and hold on and play well. But I think when Blake Hinson goes 0 of 7 in the half, in a second half, they're probably not going to win many games in the ACC. They could maybe get away with that against South Carolina State, but they can't. You can't have an 0 of 7 half from Blake Hinson, especially in the second half, and expect to win ACC games on the road. And I don't care who you're playing. Maybe Louisville. You might be able to get away with it against Louisville, but maybe not. The team is built around Hinson's scoring, and so he's got to score. He's got to make baskets. Let's see. John Christovich says, "Why did Pitt go to the zone defense in the second half?" I think it's a good question. I probably check with Jeff Capel's response on that. I'm sure he was asked about it after the game or talked about it after the game. Maybe they just wanted to switch it up a little bit. Throw something different at Syracuse, see if they could have some success. But I thought, and they kept talking on TV about how Syracuse's 3-point shooters were on the bench. So this was maybe a good time for Pitt to go zone because Syracuse wouldn't be able to take advantage of it with 3-point shooting. But the first couple of times against the zone, Syracuse went down low and got the ball into the, right down near the basket. And I don't know if it was Guillermo Diaz-Graham's issue of how he was playing defense or just something Syracuse was able to take advantage of, but they got a goaltending and a dunk out of it, basically running the same kind of stuff. And I think Pitt more or less went out of the zone at that point. They did force a bad 3 attempt, I think. And then I think Syracuse did hit a 3, and then after that, it was pretty much when they got out of it. But I don't know. I don't know what Jeff Capel would say about why they went to the zone in that situation. Dennis Hurl says, Bub and Lowe had good games. Leggett and Hinson did terrible. Generally speaking, I don't disagree. Leggett had 5 points on 2 of 10 shooting. He was 0 of 2 from 3. Hinson, like I said, had 11 points on 3 of 12 shooting. Carrington, I think Carrington had a great first half, is what I would say. I think he was really good in the first half, not so much in the second half. Lowe, I think in the first half, only played 8 minutes, didn't score on his 2 attempts. In the second half, Lowe was 3 of 6 for 9 points. He played 8 minutes again, had 2 assists. I thought he played really well, and I thought he showed some of his potential. I think it definitely came out of that second half being excited about Jalen Lowe for the way he was driving and the plays he was able to make when he drove to the basket. And so I can't give anybody a complete game grade here because I don't know if anybody played, well on a complete game level. I think Leggett played pretty poorly on a complete game level. I think Hinson was fine in the first half but struggled in the second half. Carrington was more of the same. And Lowe, I think, made an impact in the second half. I don't know if he played poorly in the first half, but he made an impact in the second half, whereas he didn't really make an impact before halftime. Homer Simpson says the effort was there. They were just tired and rusty. Too many turnovers, too many missed foul shots, a lot of mental mistakes. Yeah, I agree about that. And Tommy Grahams follows up bad loss, but fixable issues, turnovers, and free throw. Yeah, I think they can. I think they can clean up the turnovers. Free throws, I don't know. I've seen a lot of teams that just don't get better over the course of a season from the free throw line. It makes no sense to me why Blake Hinson struggles from the line like he does. It makes no sense to me why Guillermo Diaz-Graham was 1 of 4 from the line today. Like Federico, I get it. I don't expect him to make a shot from anywhere other than a place where he can touch, his hand to the rim. If he's out of arm's reach of the basket, I don't really, I give him a less than 50% chance of making it. But Guillermo can make shots. Jorge too. Those guys should be really good free throw shooters. Leggett is the best free throw shooter on the team, and even he missed the front end of a 1-and-1. Maybe it was the dome. Maybe the old air conditioning just took the air out of, I don't know. Whatever. But they should be better, those guys in particular, but they're not. For whatever reason. And I don't know if they'll get better over the course of the season. Like, do you expect Blake Hinson to become a good free throw shooter by the end of the year? I think he'll have games where he shoots well, but on the whole, I don't expect his percentage to be all that great. Guillermo should be better. Jorge should be good. Leggett and Carrington and Lowe should be able to knock down their free throws. I mean, you should be able to rely on those guys, and they haven't been able to this season. And it's hurt them in some key games, some key points. Bill Florigen is a super chatter, says turnovers, missed foul shots, and scoring droughts. Hard to win road games in the ACC like that. Yeah, there's no doubt about it. That's sorry, I'm seeing one of the arguments here going on in the chat. You guys going back and forth with each other. No, I agree, Bill. Yeah, I mean, look, if you turn the ball over like they did, that gave Syracuse, 16 points off turnovers? It was, Syracuse scored 16 points off turnovers. So you gave them 16 right there. You left 16 points at the free throw line because you missed 13, and 3 of those were the front end of the 1-and-1. So you add in 3 more. So you gave Syracuse 16 points in turnovers. You spotted them another 16 on your missed free throws. You basically gave Syracuse 32 points in a game you ended up losing by 8. Not for all of that, for the fact that you gave them 32 points and you only lost by 8, not a bad effort overall. Not a bad effort. But if you're just a little cleaner, you instead of turning it over 15 times for 16 points, you only turn it over 12 times for 12 points. And if you just make 5 more free throws, which isn't that much, you'd be 16 of 24, which is what? I guess that's 75% or something like that. Is that math right? Is 16 of 24? That is 67%. So it's not even that good. But, 3 fewer turnovers and 5 more free throws, and you win this game. Not asking that much. They were so bad in some of those mistake areas that they cost themselves the game. But I agree. I think you're right, Bill. It's hard to win like that, and I think that it's hard to win like that. But I think also, like somebody else mentioned, it's fixable. I think you can correct it. Let's see. Byron Flex says the metric of the game. Syracuse's bench had 52 points. Pitt had 17. With Blake and Ishmael absent, it's impossibly close when the bench was awful. 52-17 is a huge bench number. I mean, Brown, Williams, and Copeland combined for all 52 of those points coming off the bench. I think one of the things you have to look at with Pitt as far as bench scoring, particularly with the lineup like it is now, when you have Will Jefferson, Federico coming off the bench and playing 21 minutes each, you're not going to get a lot of bench scoring because those aren't big bench scores. If you put Jefferson, Federico in the starting lineup and bring in Austin and Guillermo Diaz-Graham off the bench, now all of a sudden, your bench numbers might look better. You might end up with better bench scoring than you got out of the 8 points of Jefferson, Federico. So I think to some extent it's kind of how you create your lineups. Pitt has a few guys who are very much defense first, and they're not very good offensively. They're not much of a threat, and they're not going to score a lot of points. And then they have a few guys that they can sub for those guys. So it depends on who you want to start. Do you want to start your defensive guys? Well, then put Federico and Jefferson in the starting lineup, and you'll get a bunch of bench scoring with Guillermo and Zach Austin. Do you want to start your scoring options, Guillermo and Austin, put them in the starting lineup, and you're not going to get much out of the bench because Jefferson and Federico just aren't going to score much. And that's one of those things, kind of like when we talked about the interior scoring earlier, it's just not really going to change this season. You're just not going to magically develop offense out of Jefferson and Federico. You know what they are. You're going to get what you get. I mean, you're going to get games like Jeffers had here. Will Jeffers scored 2 points, but he had 10 rebounds, and an assist. So had 4 fouls. But that's the kind of game you're going to get out of Will Jeffers, coming off the bench. Let's see. Scrolling down, see who else wants to chime in here. A lot of the same guys all saying things. Scroll here because we got a few more minutes to see. Tommy Graham says the ceiling for Bub and Jalen is really high. Chris, I told you he can be the fourth scorer. That's true. We were having a conversation about the fourth scorer the other night on the live show. And maybe the premise of the question is wrong altogether because we sort of talked about it as, all right, you've got Hinson, Carrington, Leggett. Who's going to be the fourth guy in that mix? And they don't necessarily have to be the fourth leading scorer, but if those three are going to be in your top four scorers every night, who else is going to be in that group? And maybe we framed the question wrong right off the bat because maybe Ishmael Leggett's not part of that group. He needs to figure out what he can do. But you're right, Tommy Grahams. You said Lowe could be part of it. I wasn't sure how he would fit in, but boy, if you could take what he did right around the 10 to 8 minute mark in the second half, and a little bit at the end of the game as well, bottle that up and do it more over the course of the game. First of all, he'll play more than 18 minutes or 16 minutes or whatever he had today. But second of all, I think he can really contribute and be a good player for you. And I think he's showing that. I think you're seeing development from him and growth from him, just like you're seeing it from Bub Carrington. I think both of those freshman guards are really promising. And if they can keep building on it, they'll be, they're going to help Pitt win games this year. So maybe Lowe could be one of those guys. Let's see. Along those lines, Josh Newark asks, does I just lost it. Where did Josh Newark ask this? Josh asked, does Lowe need to start over Leggett? And that's an interesting idea. I mean, he seems like he's playing better than Leggett right now. I don't know if you would want to start Lowe and Carrington because at some points those guys are going to sub in for each other. I mean, unless you start Lowe and Carrington and then you sub in Leggett shortly into the game so you can kind of alternate off and on with Lowe and Carrington occasionally playing together and occasionally with only one of them out there. I don't know if you want to start both of them, but that's just me. I think you would want to have an opportunity to bring Lowe off the bench. I think you like having. I think Jeff Capel likes having him come off the bench and get different looks, either Lowe and Leggett or Lowe and Carrington playing together. We haven't really seen all three of those guys. Just a little bit, we saw all three of those guys playing together, but it wasn't very much. So I think you would leave Lowe on the bench, but that doesn't mean you can't get more minutes for him. That doesn't mean he can't play 20, 21 minutes, and it doesn't all have to come at the expense of Bub Carrington. Some of those minutes can come in place of Ishmael Leggett. So that'll be something to watch going forward to see if Capel wants to do that and get Lowe a little more involved in that way. Michael B. Looks like maybe our last super chatter here we had just a couple more minutes. He says, Chris, what the hell happened to Federico this season? He looks nothing like the player from last season. And what is Jorge Diaz-Graham's role on this team? What happened to Federico? His offensive game didn't take any steps forward, and he looks... I hate to say this because I don't know what's going on inside his head, so I don't want to pretend like I do know, but he looks unsure of himself out there. He looks like he's lacking confidence a little bit when he's going up for rebounds, when he's going up to try and get putbacks, when he's trying to when he's trying to do anything with the basketball, really. He looks like, although he did have that drive to the hoop today, so can't entirely rule out his skills, but he just looks like he's lacking a little bit of confidence. And I'm not sure if he needs to have like a Carolina type of game. Like you had like Armando Bacot last year, and Carolina coming in on Tuesday night, maybe he'll have an opportunity to get that. But maybe he needs to have that kind of game to really give him a boost going forward. I'm not sure. I don't know what to tell you about Federico, other than that they need more from him on the defense and the rebounding. They need more out of Federico, more than they're getting. I've curtailed my expectations for him or hopes for him offensively. I just don't think there's a lot that's going to happen there, but he can definitely do more on the defensive end, and he can definitely do more on the rebounding end, and they're going to need him to do more in both of those areas going forward. So Pitt loses by 8. They drop to 9-4 overall, 0-2 in the ACC. They've got Carolina on Tuesday night at the Peterson Event Center, 7 o'clock tip-off for that one. So we'll see what that game brings. And a tough one. This will be my final thought. You hate when you come out of a game like this and you look at it and say, oh, that one's going to come back to bite you. Not necessarily that I think it'll go down as a bad loss. It was a road conference game, and you lose road conference games sometimes. And we're losing sight of, or we're forgetting what it's like actually to be in conference play. And I remember having these conversations last year that even when you're good, and I'm not saying about how good this year's Pitt team is or isn't, but even when you're good, you still can lose conference road games because it's just tough to go on the road in conference play and get wins. But you hate to look back and say, oh, that was one that got away. It didn't hurt their resume like as a bad loss. But boy, that could have looked nice if they had that win on there. You don't want this game to carry any kind of significance or relevance or have an impact on your NCAA tournament resume. At least in terms of not helping it. I didn't really say that the best way. The words got jumbled up on there. What I mean is this was an opportunity to log a quality win on the road in a conference game, and you blew it. You wasted that opportunity, and that stings, and that could come back to haunt you, not because it was a bad loss, but because it was a missed opportunity for a quality loss. All right, Pitt loses. What are you going to do? Enjoy New Year's, I guess. That's what you're going to do. There's a lot of games left to play, and we'll see what happens as they play them. So stay tuned, of course, here at youtube.com/Panther-Lair.com to make sure you catch all of our videos, the Morning Pitt videos. And Josh Newark's here as a super chatter. I want to thank Chris for the excellent Pitt coverage. Happy New Year, Panther fans. Take a shot. Yeah, we don't have the shots going yet, Josh. It's not New Year's Eve. We'll get those going tomorrow. But have a happy New Year's Eve. Have a safe New Year's Eve and a happy and safe New Year's Day. Watch football. Enjoy all those things that it has to offer, that this holiday has to offer. We'll, of course, be back with the Morning Pit on Tuesday morning. We're not going to do one on New Year's Day. We won't have one for you there. But we'll be back on Tuesday morning, and we'll dive into it. 2024 is coming up fast. So signing off for the year of 2023. I hope it's been a good one for you. I hope you enjoy this Saturday and this weekend. And we will see you. Am I a total dork if I say we'll see you next year? I am, so I won't say it. But we will see you in 2024. So have a great weekend, everybody. Enjoy New Year's, and we will talk to you on Tuesday morning.